He's been a frequent guest of this program with his work with Westwood One Radio's coverage of the NFL, and that's how we saw him at the Super Bowl, looking like he could still play. And then we heard what happened, and now it's time for him to come on the show to actually lend us his story. He is Tony Boselli here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Tony?
Rich, thanks for having me, number one. And I'm doing better every day. I actually feel pretty good for the most part at this time. Still waiting to get cleared 100%. I got to take a couple tests, took one today. And the last thing to kind of come back are my lungs, just as far as, feeling like I could go out and do stuff. I get a little tired quicker than usual. But overall, I got no complaints, I'll tell you that much. I'm sitting at home and on the phone with you. That's pretty good compared to where I was 10 days ago.
No doubt. So let's walk through this, Tony. When did you first feel something was off?
Yeah, I think, I think it was March 13th or 14th tonight. That Monday, it was a Monday night. I felt like I got allergies kicked in. It was just, stuffed up nose, runny nose, no big deal. Woke up Tuesday, felt pretty much the same way. But because of COVID, you're a little bit more aware. Took my temperature, called a doctor friend of mine, and he's like, listen, it's probably just allergies. You have no fever, no big deal. But I still I stayed at home just to, I said, let me just stay at home. I'll get better. I'll be all good tomorrow. But I woke up that Wednesday and felt worse, ended up having a fever, and found out that day. A friend of mine called me and said, hey, listen, just so you know, I think it was Thursday before, we were around somebody who just tested positive earlier this week. So at that point, I felt like, I probably got this, so let me go get tested. Called my doc at Mayo, got tested, and then found out the following Friday that I was positive for coronavirus. And even then, though, Rich, at that point, I felt like I had a minor flu, no big deal. And I really thought, being 47 years old and healthy, I thought, this will be a nuisance at most. And I'll be back healthy in a few days. My wife tested positive, too, because we both were at the same event. And she was fine, no problems. She never had a fever. But I went sideways pretty quick after that weekend. And it was much more serious than I ever imagined.
Tony Boselli here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you mean by sideways, if you don't mind us prying? Because, again, I think your story certainly is you're 47, you're healthy, and you go sideways. What does that mean, sideways, Tony?
I got through the weekend, and I thought I was starting to get on the other side and feeling better. And that Monday, I had a pretty good day. I'm like, all right, I'm almost done with this thing. And I woke up the following Tuesday morning, and I was as sick as a dog. And I could really start feeling I was wheezing. Felt like my lungs were going, it was harder to breathe. I wouldn't say I was gasping for air or anything, but I could barely get up. I just laid around all day. Nothing I did would kill the fever. No Tylenol would knock it out, so I had a constant fever. And said, you know what, let me just go to bed Tuesday night. Hopefully I'll get better. And I woke up Wednesday after not sleeping barely at all. And now I was really, I try to, I'd be coughing. It was hard to catch my breath. And I started talking to my wife about it. She's like, well, let's call your doctor. Let's call the doc. And I called him and told him what I was going through. He says, you need to get to the ER immediately. And that was Wednesday, a week, so last Wednesday, 10 days ago, I guess it would be 11 days ago. And so I went to the ER. My daughter dropped me off. And I thought, Rich, I was going in there to get some fluids and some meds and that I would be back out. And they go in and they take x-rays of my chest, and the pulmonologist walked in and said, you're not going anywhere. You're going to the ICU. And my initial response was like, ICU? I'm like, I don't want to go to the ICU. And he said, you don't have a choice. You're going, and you need to be watched closely. You need to get on oxygen because your oxygen levels aren't very good right now. And so that started the process of going to the ICU, getting on a bunch of, the drugs, the anti-malaria drugs and antibiotics and all the different stuff I think everyone's heard about. And I was in the hospital 5 days, and thankfully it went the right direction. But you go in, you find out you're going to the ICU, and these doctors and medical workers are amazing people, and they're in their full personal protective equipment, like almost hazmat suits and everything else, and they look at you and they say, "Hey, we're going to do everything we can, and we're going to give you all the drugs we can that we think will work, but we don't know where this thing's going to go." And at that moment, you're sitting there going, "What do you mean you don't know which direction this is going to go?" I'm 47 years old and healthy. This is only supposed to go one direction, and that's me at home right now. And so there's some scary moments sitting there in the ICU.
Tony Boselli here on the Rich Eisen Show. So did at any point you think, I'm sorry to ask, but at any point you think this is it?
No, yeah.
Tony? I mean...
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. It's a very fair question, because you're sitting in the ICU and your family can't see you. No one can see you. The only people who come in are the nurses and the doctors in their full outfits. And so you're by yourself a lot. And I think, when I first got there, I was so sick and felt so lousy. I was, I don't know what I was thinking, but I remember I think it was either that night, the first night, or the next morning, and I can't remember. To be honest with you, it kind of blurs together. But I think it was the next morning, and the doctor came in, and my oxygen was still not great, and he says, we're going to bump you up even more oxygen, and basically said that if this doesn't work, we're going to have to go to the next level. And I don't really remember what that meant, but I remember him saying something about a machine, and I don't know if it was a ventilator or what, but it was something more than I was doing already in the ICU, because the oxygen levels weren't coming up. And I remember at that moment, I thought, my goodness, I do not want to die in here. And that's where my mind was going, and you're wrestling with your thoughts of this can't be it. And I think that for me is really where my faith came into play, of really, praying and asking God to help me in this situation, not understanding why I'm there, and knowing that I had a bunch of people praying for me, and family and friends. And so you try to comfort yourself and really control your thoughts, because you don't want to go down that path. And it's hard, because those thoughts come in, I don't want to die by myself in the ICU. And there's other people, in this COVID ward or area where you are that are not making it. And that's where, it gets difficult, and you just try to control your thoughts and pray it a lot. And I'll tell you what, you get really thankful for these amazing people that have the courage and the strength to come help you.
Just amazing.
They know they're risking their exposure to this virus.
Just amazing. And in terms of the science of it, what drugs you did take, what your blood type is, or obviously the power of prayer is significant, and all of us here at this show hearing about it, we were part of all that. I mean, I heard about this and I just absolutely freaked. But in terms of the science of it, what do you think helped you turn the corner, from what you're told medically by your doctors or something?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I got to believe these drugs helped. And I mean, I was at the Mayo Clinic. It's where my doctor is. I mean, the pulmonologist I was working with, these are amazing people, and they're brilliant. And the science is, they're really, really smart. And I think, this was, almost 2 weeks ago, more at the beginning stages. And they were, they had some success with these malaria drugs and antibiotics, but they were honest. Like, we're going to wait and see. But I was on it, and 3 days later, I started feeling better, and there was a noticeable difference. And obviously, like you said, prayer and all that is important. But I think God uses doctors to help us get better, and I definitely think He used the doctors there and their intelligence and the science and all the things that they have at their disposal to help me get better. So I have to believe it helped, because 3 days later I felt better, and I give a ton of thanks to those medical workers, because they were amazing.
And what are you being told by your doctors about maybe you having antibodies in your blood that you could donate or something like that? What are you told about what have you been told medically about your your blood and your antibodies in terms of fighting this in the future? Are they telling you you're immune? What are they telling you about all of that, Tony?
Yeah, great question. They said I'm immune. Once I get through this, I'll be immune. They don't know how long because it's a new disease, and each virus has different characteristics of how long you can stay immune from it. They know I'll be immune for a certain period of time. And as soon as I get the all clear, I have to take 2 tests. And I took one today. And if it comes back negative, I'll take another one tomorrow. And if it comes back negative, then I'm in the clear of the virus. And at that point, I'll donate my blood and plasma, whatever else, for the antibodies, for them to do whatever they do with it. And if it can help someone, great. But I'll give us whatever I can at that point. But I got to get the all clear first, which hopefully after 2 negative tests, one today that I already took, hopefully the other one comes back. If that comes back negative, do that again tomorrow, and then I'll be ready to go give blood and let them do whatever they do with that.
Tony Boselli here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, few more minutes left with Tony here. Okay, so I want to go back to the beginning of this conversation where you said you got a call from somebody when you started feeling some symptoms or feeling something that was a little off, that you weren't feeling completely healthy. You got a call from somebody saying, hey, we were exposed to somebody, or we were at an event where somebody has since tested positive for COVID-19 a few days before. You get that call a few days later saying, hey, last Thursday we were. Do you recall anybody coughing on you? I mean, where can you give us what this event was to potentially let people know how easy it is to get this thing? Tony?
Yeah, it's crazy, Rich. It's a great question. Again, I mean, I don't know because it was. You got to think back to when this was happening. So let's say this is the 10th or 11th of March, and we're at the beginning stages of this whole COVID. And if you remember back then, it was like, don't get around more than 500 people, and don't shake hands, and wash your hands, and do all those things. And we were doing all that. We were watching where we went, and we weren't shaking hands, and you're doing the kind of the elbow bump and all that kind of stuff. You're washing your hands, you're conscious of touching your face and everything else, and we still got it. And what they tell what basically you realize is maybe I got it from the individual because we were at the same event. Maybe I got it if someone coughed and I walked through and I didn't even realize it. Because this is a virus that, as they'll tell you, is you can pass before you're sick. So before you show any signs, you can pass it or any symptoms. And then there's a percentage of people out there that will get the virus and be asymptomatic the entire time and never know they have it, but they can still pass it along. And so I can guess how I got it. Maybe it was from the individual, friend of mine that got it. How did that individual get it? Who knows? A bunch of us were around them. Some of us got it, some didn't. And so it's one of the things that we just have to be smart right now. And I think the overall message is these healthcare workers, forget about everyone else for a second. Listen to the healthcare people and healthcare experts. And what they're saying is true. They're not making this up. This is not a joke. This is a serious deal. And what we need to do, and, most people my age will be okay with it. They won't have the scary thing I went through. And if you're willing to roll those dice for yourself, that's your business. But I think it's time we think about everyone else in the community, the elderly, people with underlying health issues, and people who really can't fight this. And we got to, over this next, hopefully just this month, we can get through this and kind of, what they say, flatten the curve, but we can think of everyone else in our community and really make good, smart choices and get to the other side of this as soon as possible. Because trust me, you don't want to go through what I went through. I hope no one else has to, but there are people doing that right now, and I think it's a time to think of, not just ourselves, but our families and our friends and the rest of the community.
And your wife is fine now? Is she or asymptomatic?
Yeah, she's way tougher than me. Rich, she's way tougher than me. She never got a fever.
That's good.
Never.
Well, again, and that's the thing about this is that
she was tired and she lost her taste and smell, which she was ticked about, and but she's fine. She's tested she tested negative already.
Great.
She's she's no issues, and it's amazing. Same age. We're both healthy. We both were at the same event. We both get it. She has zero issues basically outside of just fatigue and not feeling like herself. and I end up in the ICU. So you just don't know.
You don't, and that's the point, right? Stay at home. I'll give you the floor. I mean, just like I'll give you the floor. You're the guy who's been through, you know what, and thankfully back. So I give you the floor on the last word here, Tony.
Yeah, just be smart. Hey, be smart. Listen to do what the healthcare workers are telling, the experts are telling us. Stay away from people. Don't congregate. Don't be around places. Go out only if it's essential to get to the things you need to do. And even when you do that, be smart. They're asking us to wear masks now. I know it's not cool. I know no one really wants to do it. Wear a mask. It's not going to kill you, and it might protect someone else and protect yourself. And so I think we just have to be smart and think of other people during this time as you're going out and doing what you have to do. Because here's the thing, Rich. This virus is scary. It's also scary for people out there because they're losing jobs and they're out working. And so the fastest way we can get people back working and trying to get this thing back on track is us being smart right now in the short run. And so I just hope we're really smart and we're diligent and listen and take care of each other right now.
And if you don't mind me adding one more thing, when you say go out with a mask, do make sure that the mask is not something that could be used by a healthcare worker. It's something that protects you and others.
Right.
Because the healthcare workers you mentioned, Tony, were lucky that they were full PPE gear, full personal protective equipment gear. Not a lot of healthcare professionals have all of that at their disposal, and we got to make sure that they have it, right?
No, Rich, you're exactly right. I mean, just go wear a scarf, just something. You don't need the N95. You don't need the,
right.
You know, what these healthcare workers do. Just wear a basic something covering your mouth so if you cough, it's not going everywhere. And we need to be thinking about these healthcare workers because you're right. I was in there early and talking to them. These are amazing people. They're courageous. Come in and without pause take care of people like me. And they were thankful at the time that they had the equipment they needed to. But in places like New York and places that are hit much harder, they are using the same protective equipment way more than they should and sometimes not having everything they need. And they're still doing the work of trying to help people get over this. So you got to be smart. I mean, you don't use, the resources that these medical workers need, give to them. We can wrap our face with a scarf or something else, and that'll be good enough.
Tony, thanks for the time. Thank God you have the ability to do it and share it. It's such an important story for you to tell, and I appreciate you doing that right here. And I'll be staying in touch to just check in with you and your wife, and God bless.
Hey, Rich, I appreciate it, and thanks for all the notes you sent before even we talked, and always enjoy being on the show.
Right back at you. Tony Boselli, future Hall of Famer. Thank God. What a story.